I think I have come to a realization about something. I had a relationship some years ago now that was, I guess, for me, the one. It was the relationship where I had the most upwelling of affection and just absolute appreciation of the person I was with. They were the shit. I backed them when they was wrong. It was me and my girl against. I didn't care. There's a lot of times she wasn't really right with people, but I was always, I don't care. I'm on her side because she's the shit to me. And it was losing that I've come to see was the most cathartic catalyst I've ever had in my life, that would grant them the title of the most significant person in my life ever, because of the impact they had on my life, the enormous impact, and more so in the losing of them than the having of them. I went through this period of pining away for a good decade, maybe a little longer, after the split, after the final sundering. I was so enamored of this woman that when she basically cut it off, she said she didn't want to do it anymore. I still tried to remain friends with her, swallowed my pride, and had to do a lot of that because she got pretty careless and even a bit cruel with how she would be towards me, knowing that she had that advantage that I needed her far more than she needed me, and would settle for just being around her, hearing her voice and seeing her face. I needed that, even though it got ugly a lot of times, and over time, worse and worse. She actually, seriously did me wrong, and when I tried to, even point that out, it was lose my number, we're not even friends anymore, and there's this huge rift, and it was narcissistic as fuck on her part. But, you grant someone that power, and, you gave it up, you gave them that over you, and if they want to hit you over the head with it, maybe you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have granted them that power, but I did. Never in my life had I given it up fully and totally like that for somebody, but with her I did. And the cathartic change that has happened, I went through this period where, like I said, I was pining. Pining and just withering away, gutted, hollowed out, nothing left, just stripped of all joy and happiness and contentment. Every day was a hell of loss. It was bad for a really long time. And, I wanted nothing more than to be able to get back to how I was before I went through that crisis. And over time, a long period of time, but finally, after going through a lot of shit in the meanwhile, a lot of hardship, it's hard to function when you're dead inside. You don't really have much will or ambition or drive. Your self-esteem is in the basement. It's it's not like clinical depression, but you're emotionally depressed. Your feelings are just miserable. You feel, like I said, gutted. And I finally, over time, came up out of that and started to get some vitality and strength and power, and no longer was I completely spineless and vulnerable and just, being that down. It's the psychic equivalent of there's a rabbit caught in a trap and it's squealing, and here come the predators to just, chew it up. Well, being in that state, it sends like a psychic signal of the equivalent of that. And you get people coming at you. They're like, they spot it. You're weak. You're weak. They can do things bad to you. They can treat you bad. And they show up. They show up. And I was dealing with these wretched indignities, just taking it. Not even getting mad. It just made me more sad. It's sad the world's like that. It's sad that these people, they just for some reason feel like they got to kick this guy when he's down, because it's obvious he is. And he's somebody that if he was like in his good form, I wouldn't be able to get away with this. So now's my chance. He's down. He's injured. So I can just go ahead and take a couple of free shots at him. And that happened a lot. And I've come back to having some strength and power and will, and I thought of that as coming back to myself for quite a while. That's how I framed it. That's how I saw it. That was the goal that I'd set for myself. And, step by step, trying to build up an edifice of me from the shattered rubble of what I was. I mean, I think what I came to realize is this. It's not a matter of getting back to who you were. That's gone. You became someone new. You built someone new, and you built it to the design of how you wanted to see yourself. The parts of yourself that you'd lost, you don't think of the petty, shitty, stupid. No, the parts that were good, parts about yourself you liked, that you made at least part of yourself into something worthy and good. You wanted to keep that. And it was the idea of that. And, when you're trying to get it back, you can't just go back to having an idea of it. No. You have to make it real this time. That's the only way, or you'll never have this thing that you long for. And I did. I made myself as I wished to be. And that's an interesting thing to think about, because, could I have possibly, it'd be nice to have been able to do that just from thinking about things and having awareness and enlightenment, right? But what if you can't get there from there? You have to get broken into nothing, ground into dust, before you have things freed up enough to actually build something like that. I'm not going to say it was all worth it. No, that was way too much of my time on this planet spent suffering, and it seemed like dumb brute suffering, because I'm like, what good is this? It's not like I'm some prophesized Messiah that my suffering does something that has a transcendent value that is good for all, and so it's a noble sacrifice. No, the way it came, and what good was that to anything? It was just me, half crippled, a shell of my former self, and having to build something to replace it, because it was all gone. All of it, everything. Everything was lost. It wasn't just the relationship either. Everything was sundered, and I was completely cast adrift. I had nothing to be connected to, and I was so desperate to have that. And like I'd said before, that's when the creeps come out of the woodwork. People were showing up, and they could see that you were in a state where they could fuck with you, and they did. A number of people, I won't name any names, but it was a clear pattern. All of a sudden, these kind of people were showing up and doing the thing that they were doing. I was practically a saint in that period of time. I was too broken to be mean or contest with anyone, I would just take it. I would just take it, and I guess you could call that being humble, but I didn't even have a bad, angry, resentful thought. I just took it. It just made me sad, but it was making it worse, and I couldn't afford the sad right then because I had plenty of it, all on my own. I didn't need somebody to come along, well, here, let me chuck some more into it. It's like I've got plenty already. And it took a long time, over a decade of not knowing if I'd make it, wondering if I'd ever be able to come back to anything or if I'd just be a burned out shell. Trying to do my best to function like a human, doing my person and impersonation as I'm just gutted inside. It's all just putting on a show for people so they can like you're obligated to show people you're just people for whatever value that has. No one really cares about anyone else anymore much. But you're supposed to play that game. You're supposed to interact a certain kind of way. It was a long, hard road. I feel like I've come out of the veil and I'm coming up into the sunlight high enough up, coming up out of the deep valley, the deep, dark valley, and, coming up onto the mountain into the sunlight. That's what it feels like. And I'm damn glad of it because part of the despair was, I'm not young. I thought, oh, is this it? I'll just be this broken old man, just, what brave hopes one has when one's young. They don't ever think of themselves going out in this long, sustained whimper. But a lot of people do. And I'd avoided it. I'd stayed hale and hearty all my life, and for as old as I am, I still am. I could still outwork kids that are fucking about the age of shit, just a little bit older than somebody to be my grandkids. I'm the old fucking guy, but I'm still solid. It was the broken heart and the psychological distress that just, you can be as fit and strong as you want. That stuff will get you. That's the Achilles heel we all have. That shit gets you some kind of way. You're stuck. You got to deal with it. And all your other abilities don't really seem to mean all that much. You might be the best this and the best that, but inside it's all just suffering, sadness and pain, and it cancels out everything. You can't just forget about that if it's real to you. You can't. Especially when it's a thing that's triggered by loss, and that was the thing, all this loss. But that was the big one, that relationship. That was the biggest one. That was the center of that particular system. There was a great deal of it that went on in other aspects too. Everything was stripped away and I was left with nothing, and maybe I was too dependent on a concept of self that existed in the form of in relationship with, but I mean, that's supposed to be healthy. That's supposed to be the proper way. I cared about my relationships, my interactive constructs with significant others, family, lover, friends, that shit. All that went away, and I didn't do well. It didn't sit well. I guess I'd never really wanted to face being alone, and maybe that's why I had all those things, was out of a desperate need to not face that ugly truth that I just didn't like being alone in my own skin with myself. I needed some other to added value it, I guess. Things have great impact in your life and can lead to enormous growth, but I begin to wonder if you really want to achieve certain things, if you have to be willing to pay pay the price. I sure did.